Welcome to We and Lewis, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the remarkable, creative, and energetic people who live in Lewis and are helping our community forge a collective soul as appealing as it is unique. These are their stories in their words. They are the we in Lewis. I'm your host, Kevin McGinnis. Our guest today is Richard Garrett, the longtime executive director of the Children's Beach House, the origins of which date back to 1936, when Lydia Chichester DuPont rented a cottage on Lewis Beach so that children could experience the same healing qualities she found there as a child. Today, it is known for providing a safe, supportive environment for under-resourced children with speech, language, and other communications challenges, after-school programs in Milton, and summer camps, just to name a few. Much of what they do is individualized, so the assistance is tailored to the needs of each child. Richard is also a very successful entrepreneur, a skill you normally don't associate with people who run nonprofits. He is the owner of Midway Motion and Fitness, arguably the most comprehensive fitness club at the beach. If there is an exercise program you've heard of, a type of exercise you prefer, they have it. It's little wonder that at any time of the day you can go to Midway Fitness and feel like half the town's there. He's also an owner in the coming pickleball complex, which will be right next door with 12 indoor courts and 4 outdoor courts, allowing it to host sanctioned tournaments. And if all goes according to plan, there soon will be a reinvention of the daily market called Market 1631. It will offer fresh baked foods, hoagies, pizza, and deli sandwiches, and most importantly, the lottery will be back. Today's episode is brought to you by the Lewis Chamber of Commerce, which was organized in April 1975 to advance the general welfare and prosperity of the Lewis area. Well, that worked. Every week, it seems the Chamber is involved in something around town. They've organized or supported events ranging from the Lewis British Motorcar Show to the Lewis Garden Tour to the Lewis Tulip Celebration to this podcast. Betsy and her team do an amazing job. And if you're visiting the Chamber's office at the historic Fisher Martin House at 120 Kings Highway, basically doubles as our visitor center. Just don't try to use the stairs. Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm so happy to be here.
The services that the Children's Beach House provides are more individualized, varied, and involved than you would be possible to share on your website. How would you describe them?
Well, that's a $100 million question, Kevin. I get asked that all the time as I go around the community and talk with folks. I wish I had $1 for every time someone said to me, you guys have a great facility over on the beach, and I know you give great parties, but what do you do for kids? And, I'm glad we're known for a good facility, and we certainly do have fun fundraisers, but really, the work that we do with the kids is obviously the most important thing that all of us should focus on. We work with kids who come from under-resourced homes and families who are also struggling, as you just mentioned, with a diagnosed communicative disability, or even those kids in some situations that have communicative challenges that are undiagnosed. And by that I mean kids who are learning English as a second language, for example, or perhaps kids who understand how to be effective in their neighborhoods and homes, but don't quite know how to translate behavior, expectations, or language to schools to be successful. Or and then later, of course, how does that translate into the work world, and how do kids learn that code switching, if you will? So we work with all those kids because communication is key, and if you can't communicate, you can't be successful. And so we think about each kid individually at the center of a slide, if you will. And then in concentric circles, we think about the most fundamental influencing group of folks who affect that child's development, and that's the family. And then the second group of folks in the next concentric circle, if you think about it, are folks at schools, because those are the spaces that kids spend the most time in, is school and home. And then the third circle is community. And then there are certainly other individualized kids, have different pieces to those circles. Not every family looks the same. When you think about the community, some kids are greatly involved in a faith congregation of some sort, others aren't. Some kids play sports, others are in a drama league. So, those circles look different for each individual kid. And one of the very unique things that we do with kids is we try to understand who and what comprise all of those circles, but we also try to understand what are the goals that the family has for that child and for the family. And our work is really about supporting, yes, most importantly, an identified child in the system, but also to support the whole system. Because if the family isn't working well, isn't effective, then the child's impacted. And so to your point of individualization, it starts there. It starts with understanding what are all the forces that impact kids, and then what are secondly, but more importantly probably, is what are the resources that are embedded in each of those circles that we could exploit to promote positive youth development. That's a long answer to your question, but that's how we work.
Are individualized programs more effective? Because I'm guessing that having one program and that sort of fits all would be more organizationally efficient. But does this approach, is it more effective in its results?
It's extremely effective. We do a pretty in-depth assessment of our programs on an ongoing basis. We evaluate constantly, and we're planning constantly. We can demonstrate change in how kids see themselves, how they view their future, the amount of competent caring adults, the number of competent caring adults around them, and the number of peers that they identify as friends. And those four things are some of the most protective factors you can put in place for kids to make them resilient and resistant to risk. So absolutely. You go into some youth programs and you can watch the kids playing basketball and the staff is on the sideline looking at their phones or clicking up with each other. When you come into our program, first of all, you see one staff to every 4 children, which is a huge, a much lower student to staff ratio than what the state would permit. In some cases, you could have 12 or 15 kids with one adult. And so that's the secret of our sauce. But all those things allow us to have a greater impact on each child that we serve. Of course, it costs a lot more to do it that way. So the individualized approach absolutely is more effective, but it's a much more expensive approach.
In a given year, how many children take part in your programs?
Again, you keep asking me these questions that don't have simple answers. In our statewide youth...
Well, that's the whole concept behind a podcast. So
right.
Take all the time you want.
Need, right? In our statewide youth development program, where we are identifying children between 7 and 12 years old, and we're bringing them to Lewis for services, we're also embedding our staff in their communities and families and schools. There are 140 slots. About 90 of them are filled today, and we're working on building up to the 140 capacity that we have. However, just to take that one program, when we take a child into that program, we take them and make a commitment. Remember, they're 7 to 12 when they come into the program. We are going to stick with them and their families until that child graduates from high school. So it's a long-term commitment. It's not a one-and-done type of thing. It's not a crisis intervention program. It's a partnership. And if you remember, I mentioned that we serve whole families. So we take Mikey into the program, and his sister Mary has a bout with depression. We are going to respond and support her and that family just as if that child was the one identified in the program. So even though we have about 90 kids identified, in the system, in that one program, there's close to 500 kids in the families of those kids that we serve. A lot of our kids come from large families, so we're pushing that amount. We're also, however, supporting the parents in those systems and whoever else lives in the house. Grandmom's there. Grandmom's part of the family. Grandmom has a crisis. We're going to respond and make sure the family gets connected to the resources that they need. Our preschool has 34 kids in it, 3 and 4-year-olds and then we have the after-school programs that have just opened this year. There's only about 55 or 60 kids in those programs, but they've been built to accommodate 175 each. So presumably we'll continue to grow over the next few years and grow up to those numbers. So,
who came up with this approach?
Well, it's interesting. When I came here in 2003, the program used a behaviorist approach, sort of that Pavlovian dog thing, and it was much more refined and appropriate for kids, obviously. But
I'm sure there was a different term.
Right. It was called positive behavior supports, actually.
Yeah, that's probably better, yeah.
And it was based on reward and consequences, or reward and punishment. Fundamentally, that was the basis of it. It came out of the 1950s. It was embraced at the Beach House in the 70s. And by the time I got there in the early 2000s, it was full on. I sat down at lunch. A child says to me, "May I please have the ketchup?" And I say, "Sure." I hand him the ketchup and he says, "Thank you very much." And he hands me a card. And I said, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And he says, "You're supposed to punch it because I asked appropriately and I should be able to get enough punches in my card, I can go get something at this camp store." And that system works great for kids who really need support and have behavioral problems. I don't mean to take a crack at it at all, but that's not who our kids were. And while kids were practicing their manners in a pretentious kind of way, there was no real conversation between the kids and the staff at the table. We went to great lengths to have these low ratios, but there was no real conversation going on about things like, how was your day? What was hard today? What went really well? What was successful? What do you think about what you're going to do this afternoon? What are you looking forward to? All those things weren't being discussed because kids were pretending, to behave themselves so that they could get their cards. So we started looking for something else to really build the program and the approach on. And what we discovered and adopted along the way was something called the Positive Youth Development Theory, PYD theory. It actually has an interesting history. It comes out of the addictions world. People that were looking at addicts who kept needing to be retreaded. They went through a treatment and they couldn't kick their habits. And they kept trying to figure out, what's wrong with these people? What are we doing wrong? And they spent tons and tons of time and money looking at that. And somebody finally said, why don't we look at those that were successful? And why don't we see what happened for them, what worked for them? And why don't we try to model a program around that? And that's exactly what happened in the world of youth work. Folks started saying, what are the things that are present in kids' lives who are effective, who grow up healthy, who become contributing adults and effective members of society? And so that's what the whole theory is based on. It's evidence-based. A lot of research has gone into it. So in 2003, we started integrating that into our work, and today we're a full-fledged, fully built-out Positive Youth Development Theory program.
Are there social or economic factors that can play a significant role in this area?
Well, maybe not in the town of Lewis, but there used to be, when I came here, there used to be pockets of poverty here, but those folks have predominantly moved a little west. When we started this work in 2003 with retreading the programs and rebuilding them, we did put an emphasis on under-resourced kids and families. And so we imagined back then that working with the communicative disabilities, those kids that needed IEPs, we would spend a lot of our time, we thought, helping parents to understand what was being offered by districts to support their kids and how to advocate for adequate support. And here we are 23 years later, and most of what we do is help families with the issues related to poverty. We have a number of folks who, from time to time, move through the shelter systems when they lose housing. We have lots of emphasis put on accessing health care for families. I've lost two parents in this time frame, two moms who had ovarian cancer and didn't know it until they were so far along they couldn't be saved, and it's because they didn't have the preventative medicine or access to health care. So I would say 80% of what we do is efforts responding to issues of poverty and not the more more technical work around accessing speech and language services.
I think one of your people once mentioned that they were working on a program where you all had done your individualized assessment. You had done a lot of research and just realized the child was cold.
Right.
So it can be things like that as well.
It absolutely, or hungry, and I don't know what you know about kids with communicative disabilities, but the number one thing is loneliness. And I feel like we're having a universal problem with that issue right now, but for these kids, it's pretty emphatic.
Is one of the most critical elements to this program parental buy-in?
Well, I guess I trip over that a little bit because the best way to respond, I guess, is to tell you a story. I was once called to a hotel where a father of a couple of our kids actually had lost his wife, one of the wives that had died because she didn't have adequate medical care. And he lost his home, and he was in a hotel, and he was working his butt off and really operating with a microwave to feed kids dinner. And I walked in and sat down and listened and tried to be a good social worker. But then I made the mistake of saying, it seems to me the most critical thing we need to do is to address this issue of homelessness. And he stopped me and he said to me, Rich, after losing my wife, my kids lost their mother. We need to be together. We need to be close right now. I need my kids and my kids need me. And so really, in this hotel room, it's working okay. And at some point, I'll find a new house. But as long as I'm here and my kids are here, I have a home. And it stopped me in my tracks because I realized I was bringing some judgment and some assumptions to my desire to help, right? And I learned that parents, I would say all the parents I work with are doing the best they can. Some of them are working multiple jobs, and schools get frustrated because mom and dad don't come to IEP meetings. Mom and dad don't get paid if mom and dad don't get to work. So do you want them at an IEP meeting, or do you want them to be able to feed the kids? That's the real choices that people are making. And so parental buy-in is absolutely important. But from the standpoint of it's our job as youth workers to understand where each person is, each child, each family, each parent, where are they? And let's start from there. And let's believe everybody in the system's doing the best they can. And then let's start and see what we can do to build on that.
So as you said, most of us don't know what you're doing there. It's a beautiful facility.
Right.
If you walk by, you can hear the kids in the preschool having fun and playing. I had no idea, though, that you were so involved in the child's life and the family, and helping the family as much as helping that child.
Yep. It to us is there are programs who espouse to follow the positive youth development theory, but I really am proud of the way our staff walks the talk. We really do try to live out each piece of that theoretical commitment.
What led to your opening after-school programs in Milton?
Well, we were trying to figure out during a strategic planning process, which was coinciding with COVID. So we were doing all these Zoom meetings with board members, and we were trying to figure out, who are we missing in our work? Who are we not including who really needs these services? And prior to that, we only accepted kids who had identified speech, language, and hearing problems diagnosed with a treatment plan embedded in their IEPs. Okay, that's how we sorted the kids out. And then we did these really great expert panels. We had 5 panels that came and spoke to the board, and each panelist had to learn a lot about Children's Beach House, about what we did, and then they sat in front of the board and they answered a couple of scripted questions for about a half an hour, and then they had about an hour and a half of a rolling conversation. And in each of those 5 panels, which each had between 3 and 4 people on them, we kept hearing that there are kids out there who are, first of all, have problems that should be diagnosed and they're not. Something like 7% of our kids in Delaware have a diagnosable speech and language issue, but only about 1% of them are being identified and put into programming. So there's a large number of kids who need it. And then we were learning that there were other communicative issues that we're not ever going to be diagnosed, like this English as a second language. It's not a diagnosable problem that needs therapy. These kids need English classes, right? So we started to understand that the success we were having could be applied. And we were also learning that because the Children's Beach House serves kids in every community and almost every district in Delaware, we're everywhere, which means we're not really anywhere, if you follow. Mm-hmm. We don't really know the resources in communities. So Johnny has an interest in an after-school job. We don't have the connections in Ellesmere to help know who's a safe employer for Johnny and how can we set something up where he could start to learn some things about the work world at the same time earn a little bit of money. So we decided to look for a community where we could demonstrate a project. We could embed ourselves in a community, get to know the community and understand their needs and their resources, and then try to build a program that, based on positive youth development theory, that would respond to a need. We had 2 clusters of kids and families, one up in North Wilmington and one in Milton. So we decided to do a demo project over there. We opened an office and we just spent time hanging around town, our staff, and listening to people, talking to people, hanging out in schools and meeting parents. And it became very clear that they really needed some help with after-school programming. And so we partnered with the district, who, by the way, has been a great partner. And we have designed this program to deliver our program same exact outcomes, same exact goals as our statewide program, but being delivered after school and in summer day camps, as opposed to the way that we deliver them in residential camps here in Lewis. So that's where it came from.
2 things about what you've just said. First of all, you took time. It sounds like you took time to spend a lot of internal consideration of different approaches, different things. You're always talking about planning. Often with nonprofits, you don't hear about that planning. There's sort of this, we need to get things done now approach. But you had the opportunity, or you forced the opportunity on the organization to take the time just to go to Milton and set something up. And by doing it the way you did that make it easier for the school to accept you, as opposed to going to the school and saying, hey, we have an after program for you all set up?
Absolutely. And to earn the trust by partnering with them when they had an existing after school program that was losing funding. And so we started to partner and provide volunteer support and meet some of the teachers and gain confidence. It was a whole process over probably almost 3 full years that we worked over there.
Now, have you been at the Children's Beach House long enough to see some of your kids grow up, graduate? That has to be kind of a magical moment.
Well, it is a magical moment, and I wish I saw more of them than I do. But I have a couple of favorite stories around that, but let me tell you the most recent one. When I came to the beach house in 2003, there was a girl starting, actually two girls in that group, but the one I'll talk about today is Colleen. Colleen was a great kid and had an obvious speech impediment, W for R type of thing, and Colleen bought, and her mom bought into the program completely and fully and engaged, and we engaged with Colleen's teachers and offered all the support that the program was designed to do. Colleen, when she graduated from high school, would have usually left the program, but she opted to come back and serve as a counselor on staff. And she was with us, I would guess, probably 6 or more years. And during that time decided that she wanted to be a social worker, got herself into Bryn Mawr and earned a master's degree in social work, and went out and worked in the world for a couple of years. And I guess about 6 months ago, she came back and joined us full time. And now she's one of our family engagement coordinators, who we used to call case managers. And what I love about Colleen, besides the reference that she has for overcoming her speech problem, and maybe not all of it all the time, but she certainly speaks very clearly, and everybody understands her. Where she didn't overcome for something, she's learned to beautifully compensate for it and not to let it hold her back. And so those are the lessons I want our kids to learn from her. And secondly, her involvement in camp as a counselor for all those years, she really understands the opportunities that are present when kids come to camp to try new things, to have experiences that they wouldn't normally have. And she supports the staff in taking full advantage of all those. So her presence has really been transformational, and I'm incredibly proud.
Did you have some speech challenges of your own when you were growing up?
Why, you think I won't shut the heck up? I'm making up for lost time. In some of our events, I described myself as a kid as being one of our kids. I had a speech impediment that was so severe that I had 6 siblings, and 3 of them would be called in to interpret for me, my older siblings, because folks outside my family couldn't understand what I was trying to say. In elementary school, it became the barrier to me really having close friends. And by the time middle school came, my speech problems were being resolved. But there was a separation between me and my peers that was incredibly painful. And I can remember being smart enough to realize there was something different about me that put a wall between me and them. And that was a very painful experience. Also, understood or felt the pains of first being teased, and it's funny in the beginning, but as you get into middle school, it comes, it takes a whole new level, and the bullying starts. And I look back on those times. It wasn't probably until my junior year of high school that I really felt like I found my groove and my tribe, and I was really connected, and things fell into place in a different way for me. And as with so many other things in life, right, you go through struggles, and life is a process. That experience built incredible empathy, and my ability to do this work. I had no idea what God was preparing me for, but I feel really lucky now to be able to understand not just what kids go through, but how much parents worry about, how do I help my kid? How can I help them get through this? Why are the other kids not being nice to them? I really understand it in a different way, and that's been an incredible gift in what I do now.
Other than who you are, you had that moment where you could have gone bitter, or you could have worked hard to beat it. What led you to do the latter?
Kevin, this is part of our program too, the answer to that question. I hope everybody listening to this podcast could think about their youth and identify at least one, but maybe really at least 3 competent, caring adults who had an impact on your development. And if you have that, you have no idea how fortunate you were. And that is exactly one of the pieces that we work so hard to do. So in my life, I could name 3 people that had such an incredible impact, and all of them are people that I stay in touch with today. One of them is a 93-year-old nun, a Franciscan sister who lives in Aston, PA, at the retirement center there, and I try to see her as often as I can. She was my math teacher in 5th and 6th grade, incredibly painful and awkward years for me. And she didn't see any of it. She didn't engage in any of it. She saw the absolute best that I could be, and she demanded that person to show up every day. And when I didn't, she set clear boundaries. But I adored this woman, and I got to the point with her that I didn't want her to see me any other way. So I was always my best. I brought my best game to that room because I knew I had to. Those are the key qualities of what we refer to as competent, caring adults. People who are, first of all, caring, who care about kids and will always put them first and would never do anything to hurt a kid, right? And the competent side is knowing how to effectively support and move kids forward. You just don't engage in whatever the drama is or their sob story or the painful experience of the day, but somehow you listen, you assure them that they're seen and heard, but you call them forward somehow. And I was really lucky to have 3 people who did that for me. So I think that's the difference. There's actually huge surveys that Search Institute has done to say to kids, how many adults are in your world that are not your parents can you go and talk to? And that's another key. We don't ever listen to our parents the way we listen to other people. And that's a huge thing to help parents to understand, right? In our work with parents, we say your kid's going to have some relationships with other adults and some great things are going to happen out of that. And it is no reflection on what you can or can't do.
How important has your college major been to your career?
My entire college experience started with a 2-year stint in a Catholic seminary when I thought that I wanted to be a priest. And while I was there, I started with my psychology degree, and they gave me internships where I actually got to go and do intake in social services organizations, or I got to volunteer in homeless shelters or abuse shelters for domestic. For those who have suffered domestic abuse. This is going to sound so funny, but on the seminary side, I think one of the most formative experiences I had was teaching phys ed. And now remember, I'm an uncoordinated kid. When I worked in Philly, the kids in my program would ask me to play basketball, not because I was good, because they like to laugh. How uncoordinated I am, right? And so here I am trying as a 20-year-old trying to teach elementary school kids phys ed. And what an incredible formative experience that became, because the 2 nuns that ran the school taught me how to teach and taught me about how to be that competent adult in a kid's world, something that nobody intentionally teaches people. But if you do, it's powerful. I then went to Allentown College. When I left the seminary, I transferred down to Newman, and again, an excellent experience, more of my Franciscan connections. That's where the retirement center is there at the college. And it gave me such important theory and then exposure to practice and understanding what the theory means. So yeah, incredibly important. And I feel fortunate to have had all of it.
I had no idea that at one point you were thinking of becoming a priest.
I covered all the bases in this lifetime.
Often people who become executives of nonprofits may have a lot of experience in the mission of the organization, but not in the financial and organizational challenges that are at the heart of the entity's success. How did you learn both sides?
So I think it would be incredibly unfair for me to say that I ever really did learn both sides. I've been very lucky to have people around me, an incredible board of trustees who have really worked with me to understand how money works, and how money can be leveraged, and how money is just another view of an organization. It's another lens to look at an organization through, but it isn't always the determining lens, but it is an important lens, obviously. So I feel really fortunate. In the last, I'd say probably 7 years, we've had a gentleman on our board who's well known in this town who has made such an incredible impact. His name is Mike Hogan. And I've been very fortunate to be under his tutorship in the world of finance, and I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot more about Excel than I ever thought I would care to learn. But what Mike helped us to learn, and then there have been others that have backed him up. Ray Book, another huge pillar in this community, served on our board. He gets it. And has been very patient with me not getting it. Mark Hutton, who's the president over at M&T Bank, he is on our board, another incredible voice. Ellison Carey. These folks are, and there, we have other folks, Elise Moore on our program side, and John Schultz on the development side, and Tom Sheridan on governance. Great trustees, right? But the finance guys really taught me that you may be in love with the mission, but baby, you better respect the math, because if you can't pay your bills and you can't pay your staff, you're going to have a problem. And so in the last couple of years, they've drugged me through scenario analysis. Now, I'm happy to talk about how kids grow and learn, but you want me to project on an Excel sheet 5 scenarios and then tell you which one is most probable? That gets to be very daunting to a guy like me. But I've learned as much as I needed to learn so that I can be a competent leader, and that I hopefully am providing the right amount of supervision to the finance team. By that I mean knowing the big picture things and knowing the controls that have to be in place to keep everything safe and secure. That's where my eyes need to be, not on every penny. If I don't trust the what I affectionately call the bean counters to watch the pennies, then I got the wrong people in the wrong seat. But I can at least watch the controls and the big picture, and that's what they've helped me to do. But you got to respect the math.
Greater Good Events is a full-service catering and events business under the umbrella of the Children's Beach House. 100% of the organization's profits go to the programs at the Children's Beach House. How did this relationship start?
It started because we have a beautiful facility on the Delaware Bay, and some folks wanted to get married there. And there was one leader in town who's no longer with us who asked me one day if his daughter could get married there. And I said, I'm sorry, the board doesn't allow the facility to be rented for weddings or parties. And back in the day, that was true. And his wife was with him and started to argue with me. And he looked at her and he said, he's a nobody. Let's go to somebody on the board. And it was pretty funny. And what's funniest is he didn't have his wedding there. And I didn't really care one way or the other, to tell you the truth. But years later, the board was thinking about how it could earn some additional money on weekends, but we didn't have kids. Kids and programming are obviously the priority. And so they decided to allow, we hired a restaurant in town to manage the relationships and to manage the venue. And all we did was rent the venue for $1,000 a weekend or something. And we thought that was a lot of money until we started seeing the bills come in. The brides were paying for catering. And, they pay us $1,000 and then they pay the event planner, multiples of that. And caterer could be $20,000. And I'm thinking, why are we not doing some of this? And it was during a time where our finance group said, you got to start looking at excessive resources and how some might be monetized. Again, social worker, didn't really know what the hell they were talking about, but I figured it out. The kitchen was one of them. And so we started dabbling in it, and it's turned into being a productive endeavor, not just from a financial standpoint, but we are planning to bring some of our kids and parents in as employees to help them earn a little extra money. And of course, from the kids' perspective, to learn something about the food service and hospitality world, which is a huge part of our world here in Sussex County. So it makes a lot of sense.
How did you come to be the owner of Midway Motion and Fitness?
Great question. Looking at me today, you're not going to
because I'm
believe
asking
the
this
answer.
question. I'm thinking about your past answer about where you were sort of self-deprecating as far as your business skills are concerned. So we're going to now try to ask a series of questions to prove you wrong.
Okay, I see. Well, good luck with that. So one of the things that kept me sane in the transition to Lewis was I was an incredible health addict. You can't tell that now, I realize. And my nieces and nephews make fun of me for saying I taught the super abs class. Not anymore. But anyway, so I was a huge gym rat and could sometimes work out first thing in the morning and then again at night. And I just was really important. And it's the time that I had my headphones on and I just was processing what we were doing in whatever world I was thinking about. And so I got interested in opening a gym and worked with one of a dear friend, Derek Lingo, who was on our board, and that's how I met Derek. And he helped me to find Midway, to buy it when the former owner was wanting to get out of the business for a number of reasons. Another wonderful person, and it worked. It didn't work financially for a while. When I bought it, there were 260 members. It was back in the day when gyms thought they could charge $150 a month or whatever, and that model just wasn't working here. And so it took me a while to figure out the numbers. And then my partner, Miguel, during COVID, left his job at La Red, where he was a billing person over there, and he came to the gym. And the two things about Miguel are that he reads people very well. He's got an incredible heart, and he understands folks. But he's got a photographic memory. And so codes and memory and numbers are, I'm not sure that he cares what they mean as much as he can remember them. What he could remember is people came in and if they used a big towel or a little towel, or they wanted a cup of coffee back then, and if they took sugar or cream or whatever, like that stuff was in his mind. And because he truly cares about people, he could welcome, hey, Kevin, here's your towel. He didn't have to say, what towel do you want? Made people feel like they were seen, made people feel like they mattered. And he changed the culture of the gym. And all of a sudden, shortly after COVID, we hit 1,000 members. And Miguel started to realize that these people aren't just coming here for wellness, they're coming here for connection. And so he started to understand the importance of quality group fitness classes, not just because it's healthy, but because it may help people to meet other people. And then he started what I call affinity groups. He put together a team of volunteers in the gym called Wellness Warriors, and they schedule a book club once a month. They have happy hour. They have a service club that goes out and does service projects for nonprofits. I'm sure I'm forgetting other things that they do. Oh, they go to, there's a group that just goes to things like Sea Witch so that people don't have to go alone. They go together as a group. And this has become an incredibly important part of the gym. It's really the community sense that he's created there. And today we have over 2,600 members. We're bursting at the seams. And we went to a happy hour last week, one of the Wellness Warrior events, and a woman introduced herself, and Miguel said, I've never seen you at the gym. And she said, oh, I don't go to the gym. I just joined so I can come to these things.
You were one of 3 organizations that received funding from the Delaware Tourism Office. In your case, to build a state pickleball complex with 12 indoor courts and 4 outdoor courts. I'm trying to think of a nice way to ask this. How did you pull that one off?
Well, let me just correct one thing that's changed since that that grant was given, and the zoning does not allow for outdoor sports where we are, so we now are having 18 indoor courts, which I actually think is better because not subject to wind and rain and the rest of it, or nighttime. Another just a fluke sort of. I watch the state chamber websites and emails. And I watch, I don't know if you're all familiar with the Pete DuPont Freedom Foundation. When Pete DuPont died, his estate set up this foundation, and his son, the one I know that's involved in it, is there. There may be other family members, and I don't want to discredit anyone. But it really is a foundation that was put in place to promote entrepreneurism in the state of Delaware. And a few years ago, they had a competition where you could write a proposal, and if you won, they would give you a full business scoping. They would look at everything you do and test your systems and tell you what your weaknesses and strengths are. And then if you responded to that report in a way, you could make a proposal to bring in a professional service. So let's say they said your weakness is in accounting, they would pay an accounting firm to come in and help you put processes and systems in place. And so I saw this grant opportunity. I wrote a proposal. We were selected. We won a scoping. They told us that the big gap for us was in marketing. And so they helped us to put together a marketing plan. But they looked at our expansion plan that we had written, and they really liked it and encouraged us to try to promote it. And then I saw this grant opportunity that came up through Delaware Tourism. And so I read the details of the grant thinking, oh, this is for places like high schools or colleges in the state that want to build athletic facilities that can bring in tourism. Or maybe townships want to do that, right? And I'm reading it, and I'm like, yeah, nothing for me, nothing. And then at the very bottom, it said, or small businesses. And so I called them, and I said, is this true? I can apply if I'm a small business? And they said, yes. Well, nobody had talked about pickleball in Delaware from that perspective yet. We were the first ones. And at the time that the grant was due, my mom was entering her last days. And so I was sitting in her room with her, and I'm feverishly writing the grant and getting it out to them. And a few days, I guess it was a few weeks later, Mom passed, and then I got the call that we were going to receive a $2 million grant. And I said a prayer, and I thanked Mom for getting right to work when she got to heaven, because I never thought in a million years that we would be able to win that kind of a grant. And it really was a game changer. We couldn't have even begun to do what we're planning to do over there without that. And so it really is just when you're a kid, they tell you 90% of the battle is showing up. Mm-hmm. And 90% of this battle was just monitoring those websites, and I still do and watch it, because not just for my business, but for opportunities for Children's Beach House.
And now you're going to start another business, Market 1631, or as it's known in my house, that place where Kevin can get lunch. Did this opportunity make sense when you consider your knowledge of the area, your business acumen, and having a caterer already in-house?
All of that, yes. And the fact that my brother Jack has recently moved to town, and he is going to be able to be the manager and to take care of that business in a way that I don't have the capacity to do. It all makes sense. And one of the things we do at Midway is we feed people in a certain way, and over there we are physically going to be feeding them. So I'm very excited about it.
And what sort of fare will you be offering?
So I hope that
this is purely a personal question.
Right. Yeah, no. We're looking at the same deli sandwiches, Italian hoagies, roast beef, ham and cheese, all that. We're looking at soups and salads, chicken salad, tuna salad. We're looking at breakfast sandwiches, so you can stop in for, a sausage, egg, and ham croissant or what have you. All those things, coffee, soda, chips, tasty cakes, one of my favorite things. All that will be there.
You've accomplished a lot professionally. You've also had a very busy and at times challenging private life. How have you been able to always keep moving forward?
This is probably such an Irish Catholic way to respond to this question. I think in a perverse sort of way, from that perspective, there's an appreciation for suffering that I don't think I would have had otherwise. I mean, we write Danny Boy for crying out loud, I mean, it's such a sad song, and yet we sing it all the time. Well, at least in my world, we do. I just think that in those setbacks, in those times of crises, those times of loss, there are opportunities. And we just came through Easter weekend, right? After every single loss, after every single death, there's something coming next. And that's part of faith. And realizing that when you're in the darkness and you can't see or hear anything, that the sun is coming and there's going to be a new day and a different reality is going to ensue. And that has happened to me when I left the seminary. I couldn't imagine. I mean, when I was there, it was only 2 years, but I had a plan. I knew what it was going to be. I knew what my world was going to look like. And I left there unexpectedly because of a crisis, and it really knocked me off my horse. And I went through that same process of trying to understand, what does it mean? Back in 2016, I came home and found my wife had died while she was taking a nap. We had decided to live separately but remain married, and we were totally in love with each other and loved each other. The world couldn't understand what we were doing, but we knew. We specifically remained married because we were concerned that if something happened to one of us, the other one wouldn't be included in the estate somehow or what have you. So we maintained that. And then she passed suddenly, and it just completely rocked my world in a different way. And a couple years later, I met Miguel, and Miguel is so much like her in so many ways. Their patience, their calmness, the way they treat people and think about people. And I'm so lucky to have two great loves in my life when I know so many people who can't have one. I feel so incredibly lucky. And losing my mom, I probably was, of her 7 children, her least favorite and least closest child. And it never bothered me. I always knew that. It was just the way it was. And I'm like, it's all right. I have my grandmother. So it didn't matter. Or it did matter, but, not the same way. But she made me her executor and her caretaker legally, in her care plan. And I was surprised when I found that out. And I asked her, I said, Mom, why would you do that when Jack is obviously your favorite and Siobhan and you are very close? And like, what? And she said, Rich, I did it because I knew you're the only one who would pull the plug. And at first I was like, okay, that didn't feel like a compliment, right? And over time, she would explain to me that she trusted that I understood what she wanted. And she said, I adore your siblings. I love all of you kids. But I don't think that they would be able to make that decision when I need you to make that decision. In the end, we all made it together anyway. But it just, it's a hard thing. But on the other side of those challenges come an understanding of not only the new world and the new opportunities, but new responsibilities. My brother built a home in Hockessin specifically for my mom, where he had a separate, beautiful room and a private bath and the whole bit. So she moved in with him. And meanwhile, I had met Miguel, and in January 1st of 2018, we had planned for him to move into my house. My brother called and said, this is not working. We got to do something different. You got to find a different plan for Mom. So I said, okay, I'll come up at Christmas and I'll talk to her and we'll see what's going on. So I arrived for my visit, and Jack wasn't home, but Mom was there, and I walked in, and before I could say anything, Mom said to me, "You got to get me the hell out of here. I can't take this." Even after Mom left, they remained incredibly close. Clearly, he was the apple of her eye, and she his. But now Mom's moving in on January 1st of 2018, and so is Miguel. So I had to call Miguel and say, hey, little problem in Eden. This isn't going to work, or, this is the deal, and I don't want you to change your mind, but I also understand if you do, because this is a whole different thing. And he thought for about 2 seconds, and he said, no, I'm okay. And later said, I was okay with it because I knew if you were the kind of guy who wouldn't walk away from your mom, you're never going to walk away from me. And so I thought that was a good enough reason to execute our plan. But then later, as I told you, I wasn't Mom's favorite. Well, it turns out she put Miguel in front of me too. And I can remember walking into her nursing home room later when she needed complete care. And she'd open her eyes and say, "Oh, hi, Rich, is Miguel with you?" And I'd be usually like, "Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm alone." But anyway, she adored him and her. And speaking of Danny Boy, in his Guatemalan accent, he sang it all the time and played it on the piano for Mom. And
what advice would you give to someone asked to take a leadership role in one of the nearly 70 nonprofits in our area?
First of all, it's about integrity. A wholeness, not just honesty, but a wholeness of seeing a whole picture and bringing your whole person to the work, with especially your ethics, right? Doing the right thing isn't always the easy thing, but when you're building something that's going to last well beyond yourself, I think it's important that it has a solid foundation of the right ethics, and where we should always be thinking about, preparing. My work today is preparing for my succession from day one. And I think we have to always think about this work that way. And, what I learned is fall in love with the mission, but respect the math. You've got to know that side of it. And that's just not the accounting and finance side. It's also the fundraising side. And yeah, this is a small town, and there's a lot of nonprofits here competing, but it's also an incredibly rich town. And I don't mean that rich in terms of dollars. I mean in terms of talent. Look at your podcast. Look at the talent that's here in this community. And if we can harness that, I think incredible things are still yet to come, So that's what I think I would tell folks.
Richard, I can't thank you enough for joining us today, for being so willing to share your story, being so candid, and some of the lessons you've learned during your career. It's an amazing story, and when you hear it all said together, you can see the person you are and how it's impacted. Because I'm knowing, and I didn't ask this question, but I'm guessing some of what you learned at the Children's Beach House got used over when you were
absolutely
handling Midway, and I think we'll see it in 1631 as well. Thanks to today's sponsor, the Lewis Chamber of Commerce. As I've mentioned before, this year marks the 50th anniversary of our local chamber. Thanks again, Betsy and Anita, for being such great supporters of the podcast and for being such loyal listeners. And thanks to you for continuing to listen. Yes, you. You make it all worthwhile. Till next time, from our headquarters at the beautiful bar of our beloved Kindle restaurant, this has been We and Lewis, the podcast.